The first thing I started with was the story, which I wrote when I was 15 in high school. It was a very different story. Uh, kind of had different characters. Ben was the only one who was the same, and it took place in a coffee shop. That was kind of the general idea. But the story changed for the project, and then I made a storyboard for my idea, and the storyboard changed twice. So it's not the original story that I intended to tell, but it was still something I'm pretty happy with. I mean, do I like the other two iterations better? Yeah, a little bit, but I'm fine with how this one came out. The next thing was coming up with the style for the characters and kind of the environment. I was kind of going for a Disney look where the environment looks fairly realistic and has some realistic textures, but the characters are not exactly realistic looking. Well, real-ish, um, but not photorealistic. Not they look like people or real people. So then I had to model the characters. I modeled Ben first. I did that last semester. Yeah, I did that last semester. I don't really have a lot of modeling classes, so I wanted to get it, and I knew this is a big project. I wanted to get a head start, so I modeled Ben first, did the textures. I started to model Mo, but I didn't finish him until later. And then for winter break, I did a lot of the modeling of the environments and everything. Because when I got back to school, I just wanted to do animations, and then that'd be it. Got back to school, I don't know, about a couple weeks in, the story changed the first time. So basically, all the modeling that I'd done over the break was pointless, and I had to remodel the coffee shop because it was too small. So I did that. Finished Mo. Um, After the mid-year review, the story changed again. So I had to come up with a new storyboard. Um, I was able to reuse some of my old environments that I had made over winter break, so that wasn't that bad. All right, so I had the story, I had characters and the environment modeled. The next step was to do the animations. And luckily, we have the motion capture studio, so I didn't have to hand animate everything. Because that would have, I'd still be working on scene one probably now. So yeah, I had my friends Danielle and Brian go in the mocap suits, went down. My friend Satchel helped us because he knows how the software works, how the hardware works. Um, so we went down, we recorded all the animations. That's the suits have the little balls on them, and the computer can track that and can make bones out of that, digital bones. And I can take those bones and put them onto my characters, which I had to do in Motion Builder, which I had never really used before. But there was a way to transfer the bones from the motion capture suit to the bones that I was already using for my characters. So once I was able to do that, the animations transferred over. Not seamlessly, but they transferred over. Um, since the proportions for my characters were not exactly human. Well, Mo is more human than Ben. Ben has long legs and he's just stretched out more. So he took a lot of editing. So I had to do some of his hand animations because when his hands were on the desks, they was too high or they were sort of crossed over, and I had to make sure they were regular and normal and they wouldn't look weird. I had to make sure that if he put his hands on his head on his hand's not going through his head, which is not possible. Um, where once I did that, I had to move on to the next step, which was the facial animations. Now, you can do a facial rig, which requires dozens and dozens of bones across the face. You can move each point. You can set up some type of control rig where on the side you have some lines saying, oh, eyes or mouth, and then you can move the point, and then it'll translate over to the actual 3D modeled face. But I have no idea how to do that. So something I tried in the past was these morph targets, where if you have one mesh with, let's say there are 10 polygons on that mesh, 10 vertices, and you have another identical copy, but you edit some of the points, you can set a morph target, and since they have the same number of polygons, same number of vertices, it can morph between the two. So the shape can change from the first one to the second one, which my sophomore year, I wanted to see if that could work with facial animations since facial rigging was very daunting. So I tried it with my elf character, and it worked pretty well. I realized that I needed to have more morph targets to make it look more seamless, needed to have more overlapping. And then I tried it again with my Nabra character, which was last year, and it worked so much better because I had more morph targets, and I made her look like she was actually saying something, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so for this animation, I knew for Ben and Mo, I wanted to have morph targets, so they weren't going to be saying anything because it's a silent-ish film, but I knew that their expressions would have to change with how they were feeling, and since they weren't talking, I needed to be able to emote their feelings with their faces. So that was the next step that I did, set up the morph targets, and then animate them so they can, there's enough overlap so it looks real and seamless. Then, once I put that onto the characters, they still animated, and they animated with their facial expressions, they're blinking and everything. Then I had to, drop them into the scene, which, I had separate files for each scene. So scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, each one was a different file. But then for each of those, I had a separate file for Ben and for Mo, where Ben's animations would be in Ben scene 1, and then I'd take the Ben scene 1 file and I'd sort of drop it into the massive environment file, just so I could keep things organized, keep things characterized by the importance and what I need them to be. And then I had to set up the lighting and the cameras and the positioning of everything. And yeah, I mean, then I had to render it out and put a mesh smooth on the characters. The lighting was really annoying to try to get because sometimes lighting changes from scene to scene because you're working with the different files. Sometimes you forget to turn a light off or turn a light on. So I had to be, conscious about that. I mean, sometimes it's on purpose and deliberate that some lights are on, some lights are off, but sometimes it was a mistake. So yeah, then I had to, actually keyframe animated other things. Ben's holding a pencil for one part of it. They open a door. The door has to be animated to open. Community members, I used Mixamo, which has some animations in it. It's a website, and you can download animations. And so, rather than having to use mocap for that or hand animate, simple, sitting, an idle sitting animation of someone looking around or someone talking to someone else, I use Mixamo for that. For the negativity guy, the red guy, I used a little bit of Mixamo and some with actual mocap for some of the scenes because he needed to be animated and more, I needed to be specific his movements in the film. So I did use Mixamo for that. And then the last step, kind of, was the post-processing. Now, I didn't do a lot of post. I tried in Premiere, but I didn't really like how it was making it look. I just don't know if I was doing it wrong. But I put a black overlay over the whole thing to bring it down a little bit, make it a little more muted and not as bright and intense. Transitions I added, and then that was pretty much it for the visuals. The sounds and the music came from Ben's sound. The sound effects, I'm in a sound effects class. So, my professor had given us a massive sound library, so all of the sounds came from that sound library. I had to drop them places because I knew I wanted to have some type of sound, but the music was also a strong thing. There was one song that I really wanted, like an actual song, which I thought would have been perfect. "Falling in Love in a Coffee Shop" by Landon Pig, and I would have to pay Sony for the rights to use that, and I said no. Let's go with the royalty-free music. So that's the direction that I went with, and I think it came out great. So yeah, that was a little behind the scenes of making Community of Love. It's on my YouTube channel, so thank you. Hope you enjoy it.